you wanted the best, you've got the best podcast. The hottest podcast in the world. The Chris Voss Show, the preeminent podcast with guests so smart you may experience serious brain bleed. The CEOs, authors, thought leaders, visionaries, and motivators. Get ready. Strap yourself in. Keep your hands, arms, and legs inside the vehicle at all times, because you're about to go on a monster education roller coaster with your brain. Now, here's your host, Chris Voss.
Hello, folks, Voss here from the ChrisVossShow.com. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the big show. As always, Chris, the Chris Voss Show is brought to you for 16 to 17, going on 17 years now, 2,600 episodes, excuse me. We just keep moving like the mammoth that we have always been, the great Chris Voss Show podcast. Top 100 podcast. You can find it all over the place. Refer the show to your family, friends, and relatives. Go to goodreads.com/Chris Voss, linkedin.com/Chris Voss, Chris Voss1 on the TikTokity, and Chris Voss or youtube.com/Chris Voss. You know, just everywhere.
Opinions expressed by guests on the podcast are solely their own and do not necessarily reflect the opinions of the host or the Chris Voss Show. Some guests of the show may be advertising on the podcast, but it is not an endorsement or review of any kind.
Today's featured author comes to us from bookstolifemarketing.co.uk. With expert publishing to strategic marketing, they help authors reach their audience and maximize their book success. Anyway, we have an amazing young man on the show with us today. We're going to be talking about his insightful book entitled Hollow Gods, out June 13th, 2023. Davidson Loehr joins us on the show today. We're going to be talking about his insights, his writings, and everything else so that you can learn more. He has always been a heretic, he claims. When he was, I just want to make sure I wasn't calling him that in his bio. This is his bio. I'm just calling my author's names. He's always been a dude. Anyway, he's always, I'm reading this. So Davidson has always been a heretic. When he was 6, his Sunday school teacher told the class a new story. It was called, as he heard it, Trinity. He didn't mind the God in the sky, Superman, and Captain Marvel were up there, so there could be room for gods too. And the God had a son. Well, this is fine too, he thought, especially since they had a poster of this blue-eyed, brown-haired son right on their Sunday school wall with a lot of little kids gathered around him. But then the teacher said there was a ghost, and there's always a ghost. The only image of a ghost Davidson knew was Casper, the friendly ghost. Casper, the friendly ghost. I grew up watching that. Now, Superman and Captain Marvel are one thing, but Casper, the friendly ghost, was just silly. So when the teacher asked if they understood this Trinity story, he told her that it wasn't a bad story, though not one of the best he'd heard. But next time, lose the ghost. The teacher got angry with him, and I love his imaginative gumption. And he said, Jesus doesn't like little boys who don't like this story. Oh. Well, then Davidson said, you can lose Jesus too. Welcome to the show, Davidson. That's a hell of an entry I've ever read. So welcome to the show. How are you, sir?
I'm fine.
I don't know that I ever thought of it that way when I heard it, but I like your version pretty good better. I like Captain America and Superman, or let's see, Captain Marvel, excuse me, I'm going to get hate mail now. Captain Marvel and Superman, to be on the show. So give us your .coms. Where do you want people to find out more about you on the interwebs, sir?
All right, now what do you want to know?
Your .coms, your websites, social media, any place that you want people to get to know you better.
I have a couple websites. They aren't doing much. One is davidsonloehr.com. The other is davidsonloehrauthor.com, and they both list books and have some bio about me and stuff like that. And they both have ways to contact me on the websites too.
When you were that little boy, did you ever think you'd be the guy on your website? I can see some pictures here. You have a giant boa that I can't believe you're standing holding that thing, because it looks like 2 foot thick.
Yeah, it's a Burmese python.
Yeah?
Yeah, it was big.
Yeah.
It was heavy.
Here's some pictures of you with an elephant. But yeah, that looks heavy. Like, I don't know that my bad back could handle that. That is... Yeah. Well, that I wouldn't keep it around, too long, at least, or not, fall asleep around that thing.
There's a story about that snake.
Is it? I'd love to hear it.
Taken 20 years ago in Thailand, I was on a trip in Thailand, a couple in the church I served in Austin asked if they could treat me to a 17-day tour of Thailand. And I thought, well, maybe,
Sure.
So we that morning, we rode elephants all morning. That's wonderful. Elephants are so smart. And then we took a break in a big tent that sold souvenirs and things. Over in the corner of the tent was a big cage with that giant snake in it and two little teenage girls standing by the cage. I couldn't figure that out. So I went over to the girls and I asked them, what is this? One of the girls reached up on the cage and got a Polaroid, showed me the Polaroid of that snake draped around somebody. I thought, oh, okay. All right, that could be fun. So I think it cost like $2 or $3. And I paid them, and the two girls picked the snake up and draped it around me. It was heavy. Once it got draped around me, I suddenly remembered that I'm scared to death of snakes. And I guess that changed my expression, because one of the little girls reached over and grabbed my arm, and she said, "You no worry, mister. He no eat you. We feed him."
We've already fed him today, so he's full. Otherwise, that's how we get our free meal. We feed them the tourists.
That's right.
Would have been funny if the girl had said, "We already had a tourist come, and he's full now."
He's full. That's right. Yeah, he looked full.
So let's get into your book, Hollow Gods, out June 13th, 2023. Tell us about this book and what is it about?
2 centuries ago, the story matters. 2 centuries ago, in America and Europe, the sciences were beginning to develop and come up. And liberals here and there liked that, and they were finding that they liked the sciences description of things better than religion's description of things. They liked science's explanation of things better. So they began sloughing off religion, God, the Bible, religion, and using the word science. Very few liberals have any degrees in science, but they love the word. And so they were rejecting heaven and God. Fine. The problem is, what do you replace an eternal heaven with? And what do you replace an omniscient, loving God with? And this was being studied at the time while it was happening by a French scholar named Bastiat, who wrote a little book called The Law. He published in 1850, 2 years after the Communist Manifesto was published. And what he discovered was that the liberals everywhere, here and there, came up with the same answers to those two questions. That they, for the eternal heaven that they didn't believe in, they substituted a utopian socialism here and now.
On the planet or an afterlife?
And Karl Marx had already talked about socialism and so on.
Okay.
Well, in order to build such a thing, it would really take the wisdom of an omniscient God, but they didn't believe in that either. And so in place of the omniscient God, they substituted themselves. And they still do. Now, Marx, to his credit, admitted that he didn't know how to construct such a socialism. But modern liberals, we're not so modest. We're sure that we do. We know how to do it. And since only we know how to do it, you see the logic developing here. Since only we know how to do it, we must have all the power. You can't let the ignorant masses interfere with our utopian socialism. And so what liberals have wanted and have sometimes said for almost 2 centuries is a totalitarian socialism. Today's Democrats call it one-party rule. Same meaning, different word. So it isn't a good thing, but it's taken the place pretty much of the Democratic Party, and it's behind the dreams of socialists. Socialists of Democrats. Liberals don't like hearing that, but it fits the description. What they're doing fits the description of it. So that's the first part. And then the book goes into 5 areas where they've done this and where they've done immense harm. Education was certainly the first, and they're still doing harm. For the last 2 generations, our education system is developing socialists. Look at Mom Dami's father, who's a professor of socialism teaching the same thing.
Now, who's Mondavi? Is he the new New York,
Mamdani, the new mayor,
the new
of
New York,
New York City.
mayor? I think, or governor,
Mayor of New York City.
Yeah. Okay. I just want to make sure we have clarified the definitions for the audience.
Yeah, good. And so education is a big one. And then politics, of course, and liberal racism. That's interesting. A lot of people don't know, and I hadn't known either, that virtually all slaves in this country were owned by Democrats. The Republican Party was formed in 1854 as the anti-slavery party, but the Democrats owned the slaves. That's very odd. Why I mention that is what they were doing with their slavery was believing that black people only existed to serve the wants and needs of white people. Well, you look at the liberals' approach to racism today, and the similarities are kind of astounding. For instance, it is true that there are some very bad schools for black students, bad educationally, unsafe, so on and so forth. So there are a fair number of black students who can't compete well to get into college. Their grades aren't as good. They aren't as smart that way. So what do the Democrats do about it? They want to lower the admission standards for black students. They're not talking about improving the black schools and the black education. That would help. They just want to lower the admission standards. In other words, they're still seeing blacks as inferior to whites, and they want to lower standards because it lets the whites feel virtuous.
Yeah, there's something about, some people talk about, I forget the term they use, white, it's a...
White supremacy?
Not white supremacy, white apologetic whiteness, something along those lines. We've had a few people on this things who broach this subject. Now, to clarify two things, because we run a factual show. According to what I'm Googling on history, this nomer that only the Democrats own slaves is incorrect. Would you agree with me on that?
Then I would say virtually all slaves were owned by liberals, by Democrats. That one I'd stick to pretty well.
So
I'm sure there were
what I'm getting off of Google search, and we could run this through Snopes, is in U.S. history, several major political parties existed before the modern Republican Party was found in 1954. Not all political parties everybody owned slaves back then. It was like everybody. The other thing you mentioned was the Republican Party was started, and you're right, the Democrats prior to Johnson, President Johnson in the 60s, were the party that supported slavery, and then it flipped under Johnson once he signed all those socialist programs. Now, the GOP came out of the Whig Party, so there is a longer history to the GOP. But the fact that slavery was supported by the Democratic Party, and then it flipped on under Johnson. So I just want to make sure that's clear. Everybody owns slaves. I've never ever heard that comment that only Democrats or liberals own slaves. Slavery was endemic throughout our history.
It's a good point, and I would just say what you've said. People should check it out. Let everybody check it out.
All right. We just want to be factual on the show and make sure
Absolutely.
that it would seem illogical that there was only a short section of that. Now, were the Democratic people who support the Democratic Party part of the people, who I think they went against Lincoln and everything else, and they were the big oligarchs when it came to slavery. Yeah, that's very true. Yeah. But it was endemic across I think everyone owned slaves pretty much back in those days. So let's keep moving through on the book. And so you feel now, and you mentioned in the subtitle of your book, Why Liberalism Became a Destructive Religion. Are you framing it as religion, or do you feel it really became a full-throated religion among liberals?
It has become what gives liberals their primary identity, because they don't get their primary identity from religion anymore. They aren't saying, we're the children of God. And I think this is partly why differences in politics have become virtually impossible to communicate across. But it's the Democrats especially who will not try to communicate with the Republicans. That is much stronger than going the other way around. I think that's true.
Okay.
Again, check it out, people.
Mm-hmm. So, what's the message you want to convey in Hollow Gods? What do you want the reader to learn out of that book?
This is my heretical part again. I'm against all ideologies.
Okay.
I'm against the ideology of the left and the ideology of the right.
Okay.
I think what you're trying to do with your program is let's stick to the facts. Let's try to find out what the facts are and stick with them and try to form your identity so that it's based on facts that are verifiable.
Mm-hmm.
And that'll make you a heretic.
Yeah. Well, you'll definitely get mail. So you're against, let's break this down and explore this situation, because my understanding is what you talk about in the book. You're against right-wing extremism.
Yes.
We call this extremism. I don't want to put words in your mouth or set you up.
Sure.
Yeah. What would you call this? On the left and right, there's ideologies on both those sides, I guess.
The left-wing extremism I would just call socialism. That seems to be what it is now.
Okay.
If there is a good name for right-wing extremism, I'm not sure what it is. I like conservatism. I prefer religion to politics for identity, but since I'm a heretic, that story's worth it too.
I think you should have put on the title of your book, Davidson quotes heretic lore. I think that would have been kind of fun.
When I finally decided, 10 years after I got back from Vietnam, I was pretty lost. Mm-hmm. And then I finally decided I liked big questions, and I wanted to work with those, and so I decided to go into ministry, which surprised the hell out of me, since I'd pretty much thrown them all out when I was 6. Mm-hmm. And I wanted the best school, and I called a minister I trusted and told him my deal, that I want to go in the ministry, but I'm ignorant of religion. I don't like being ignorant. I need a PhD, not a seminary degree, because seminary degrees just teach you how to think like a Methodist or a Catholic or whatever. And I said, where's the best school to get a PhD in religion? And he said, he was a Southern preacher. And John said, well, he said, that'd have to be the University of Chicago. And I said, oh, I didn't know Chicago had a university. And there's this silence. John says, Jesus Christ. I'll tell you what to do. Call information for Chicago. If it exists, go there. So I did, it did, and I did. And I spent 7 years at the University of Chicago getting a master's and a PhD. It was a superb school. In the first course, in the first quarter, we were in a seminar, and the professor was discussing something, and he came up to the word heresy. And he was talking about heresy for a while. Then he stopped, and he looked at us, and he said, do you people know what heresy is? And we guessed what pretty much anybody would guess. You know, it must be something bad because it got people burned at the stake. So whatever it is, it's bad.
It's a hair condition. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, that's right. And he said, no, he said, you're wrong. He said, heresy comes from a Greek verb that simply means to choose.
Oh.
And I said, wait a minute. How can just choosing be so bad? And he said, because first, there has to be an arrogant orthodoxy that has declared all choices closed because only they have the wisdom and the power to do that. And he said, from that minute on, the heretics are the people who say, no, I'm not through choosing yet. And I decided, by God, heresy is a sacred word, and I've always been one of them.
You found your calling in life.
I did.
So now let's get to your history. You talked about being in Vietnam. I opened with this story in your bio about you first kind of, again, I'm just assuming maybe your first dalliance of exposure to religion, or at least in that discussion with your teacher about the trifecta, the three the three spiritual
Trinity.
powers. The Trinity, that's it. Sorry.
Right.
The brain doesn't work anymore, so that's why I do podcasts. So talk to us about, what was your upbringing like? Was that your first exposure to religion? And then how did this develop over the ages? And tell us maybe how Vietnam shaped you and stuff like that.
Oh, boy. Whew, Vietnam. My father's father was a Presbyterian minister, so we all grew up in that. It didn't do a lot to me. I mean, from age 6, I was kind of done with it, with that story. And then we moved to another town. We moved a lot. When I was 12 and 13, we lived in a little town in Iowa, Colfax, Iowa, town of 1,800. And so we went to the Presbyterian church there. There was only one. And the minister was our Sunday school teacher for our junior high class. And I didn't like him. And I really wanted out of the class, but I knew if I acted up, I'd just get in trouble. So I had to find some way to get thrown out of the class politely. And I kept looking for an opening, and I wasn't finding one. And as Christmas approached, he starts talking about Joseph and Mary and how they were Jesus's parents and that they were married. Well, I knew they weren't married. I knew that much. And I said, wait, I don't think they were married. He said, well, of course they were married. He said, of course they were married. He said, what else would they be? And I said, well, the way I see it is, if they were married, God was an adulterer. And if they weren't married, Jesus is a bastard. Which is it?
Oh, wow. You are a heretic. Boy, I can see some people getting angry.
Out. So that finally got me out of church. What I've liked about religion, though, is that the deep questions of religion are profound and right. I may or may not like the language they're expressed in. I know the language of Christianity. I know theistic language. I'm used to it. I'm comfortable talking about it in God language and so on. But what's going on is much older than God, much bigger than God, and much more real. You know, we've created tens of thousands of gods in our history. Yeah. It's amazing. All kinds. Some of them are really funny. One of my very favorites is the ancient Greek god Koalemos, Koalemos, the god of stupidity. He has tons of followers. and one of my other favorites is the ancient Roman god of Sterculius, the god of feces. And that came from the public toilets. They had these circular public toilets where people sat on holes in a circle. And the problem they had was flushing the feces. And that was so hard to do that somebody created a god for the feces, and that was Sterculius. So we've created all kinds of gods, most of them kind of goofy. Mostly they mean it's what's in charge of whatever this subject is. But the high gods, the gods of the golden rule, the gods of love, compassion, empathy, this kind of thing, those gods are very real and onto something. Whatever you call them, you need to know how to call them forth. And when we lose the language of religion, we can lose the ability to call those forces forth. And that we need. You need the golden rule. And philosophies have it too. Buddhism taught the golden rule. Confucianism taught the golden rule. And we need that. And in the New Testament, there's a passage where Jesus is talking about the kingdom of God. And he said, well, God can't create the kingdom of God. He said, only we can create the kingdom of God. Now, that's quite a statement.
Yeah.
And he said, when you have created a world in which you all treat each other the way you want to be treated, in other words, the golden rule, you have created the kingdom of God. I believe that's absolutely true.
I know that's one of the things I think about.
Yeah, you don't have to call it God, but you need a way to call it forth. So I think the depth of religion is very good. The deep questions are profound and sacred and all those things. I was a Unitarian minister for 23 years.
Wow.
I was Unitarian because they had the greatest freedom of the pulpit, and heretics all need that.
Oh, you gotta love it. Yeah, I love how you've done the heretic thing so well. And then when did you start writing books? When did you get interested in that? I think you have at least 2 books under your belt.
Yeah, 3.
When did you start? 3. Okay.
The first, I was serving the church, a large Unitarian church in Austin, Texas, and when Bush was reelected, I had a bunch of people in the church who had worked with him and knew him and so on. When he was reelected, I didn't like him. I was very much a liberal, Democrat, left-wing, all that kind of stuff then. And I wrote a sermon, which I would never say today. That's how much I've changed. Wrote a sermon that I gave a sermon a week after he was reelected called Living Under Fascism. And a few weeks later, I learned that had gone viral on the young internet. I didn't even know what viral was and wasn't sure what the internet was about. And then about a month later, I got an email from the owner of Chelsea Green Publishing Company. It's a good publishing company. And she had read the sermon, and she said, can you either expand that sermon into book length or come up with a group of other sermons sort of in the same key, the same style? So I thought, well, I can do the second one. And she sent an editor out to Austin for 3 days, and we went through the 16 or so sermons that I'd sent him. And he said, some of them are bad, this one sucks, and so on. And we got it down to 12 sermons. And so they published those. Chelsea Green published the book of 12 sermons, and she titled it America, Fascism, and God, Sermons from a Heretical Preacher.
Oh, wow.
And she sent me a check for $5,000 as an advance.
Oh, wow.
This was 2005.
Uh-huh.
The book sold 10,000 copies. I was never paid another penny.
No.
So I haven't done well with publishers.
Oh, wow. That's not good.
But that was a good book, and the sermons are good, and I'll probably republish that book and add a few more sermons to it soon.
Yeah.
That was 2005. And then when COVID came and I had time to do research, I started doing research, and the first book I wrote was Stories of Life. I've always loved stories. I had a 3rd grade teacher who told us stories, and I loved them, and that's been it since then. And so I thought, I have a lot of stories, but my stories are interested in character, in what's the meaning of life, what's it about? And I have simple answers for some of this. People ask, and this came up, of course, as a minister, what's the meaning of life? How do you know you're living a well-lived life? And my answer to that is, it depends on your answer to 2 questions. The first question is, am I becoming my very best self? Because that's who I damned well better be becoming. And the second question is, now, how should I live so that when I look back, I can be glad I lived that way? And if you can answer those 2 questions right, you're on the right path for this. So God language can help you do it if you understand the language, but you can do it in ordinary language. The philosopher I fell in love with in grad school was Wittgenstein. You may not have heard of him. He's known as the ordinary language philosopher. And what that means is, Wittgenstein said, and boy, do I agree with this, he said, if you can't say what you believe in ordinary language, you don't know what you believe. And I think right on the money.
Yeah.
That rule needs to be applied to every religion. So I've always tried to apply it to my versions of religion and preaching and teaching. So that was that book. Unfortunately, that was another publisher who took every cent. Damn it.
Oh, no.
So then in 2003, I wrote Hollow Gods. And that was just this awareness that socialism had taken over the Democratic Party and was speaking for it. And I couldn't buy that. And so I wanted to reflect on that, on what happens and did a lot of reading on it and found that this has gone on in education for so long. When I got back from Vietnam in 1967, I had been, it's another story, but I had a unique approach to the Army that gave me some rather amazing jobs. My first 5 months in Vietnam, I was the Vietnam entertainment officer.
Oh, wow.
I worked for the little office that handled every USO show.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, man, did I beat the game. And then after a few months, an officer candidate school classmate of mine was awarded a Silver Star, the third highest award for bravery. And my cocky little world came crashing down.
Uh-oh.
And I felt cowardly and ashamed. And I reframed war in about 2 minutes. And I remember saying in my hotel room, once I'd locked the door, saying, you know, war is an archetypal experience. It's got to be much the same for all soldiers in all times and places.
Yeah.
And if I return home without having experienced war, I will not want to live with myself.
Yeah.
I could not have believed I would ever say such a thing.
Yeah, that's...
So I arranged another interview and spent my final 7 months in Vietnam as combat photographer.
Oh, wow.
Wonderful job, powerful, memorable stuff, you know, all kinds of heavy stuff and all that.
Yeah.
Those 7 months for me were sacred. I would not trade them for anything in the world. So anyway, I came back in 1967, finished my undergrad degree in music theory. I'd been a professional musician before I went in to the Army. And then kind of discovered that I don't have a gift in music. It's just something I like. And I don't want to go into a field where I don't have some kind of a gift. So I had learned as a combat photographer that I did have a gift for photography.
Yeah.
I had a good eye. I also got to work for a while with the Life magazine photographer in Vietnam. Co Rentmeister was his name. He was from Amsterdam. He was only 6 years older than I was, but he was one of these photographic geniuses who just had a gift for it. I describe people with gifts as people who were about 2 levels above anything I could even imagine. And he was one of those in photography. So I learned a lot from him, and he helped me become a better combat photographer. And I came back and finished the degree and thought, no, I don't have a gift. I don't know what to do. And spent a decade being lost, and I realized I can do photography. So I went around the country studying with half a dozen of the best people photographers in the country.
Oh, wow.
And then I opened a classy and high-priced portrait and wedding photography studio in Ann Arbor. And I really did have a gift for that. But after 6 years, I got bored. And so I sold the studio and then was just lost for a while until I finally decided, you know, I really like big questions. I like being a heretic, and I like big questions. And so I'm going to go in the ministry. And then I went to Chicago and did all that stuff. But yeah, the Army absolutely changed my life.
Well, that's awesome. That's awesome. What experience. Well, you really wanted to go experience the military thing. Did you, let me ask you this. Did you ever have any regrets about going to learn about Vietnam and getting involved in Vietnam? Did you, war is hell. So did you ever?
It is hell.
Yeah. Did you ever regret that decision?
Soldiers
maybe
adjust to that different world so quickly. I think it surprises us all how quickly we adjust to it. So you really aren't having regrets. You just aren't having regrets anymore. Now, was it tough? Sure. I went on I'd never done photography. I lied about that to get the job. I always realized that a lie is also a promise. So if you lie, you damn well better be able to keep the promise, or you deserve everything you're going to get. So I did lie, and I got the job, and then I went to the PX, and I asked them what the best camera was, and they said, well, it's a Nikon. And I said, okay, I'll take one of those. And I said, I'm going to be taking a lot of pictures out in the war. I said, what kind of film do I use? They said, oh, you use Tri-X, only Tri-X. I thought, okay, all right, give me 6 rolls of that. And they showed me how to load the film, how to put the roll of film in the camera and wind it. Wow. I thought, I didn't know that. That's pretty neat. So I took that camera out on my first operation, with the 11th Armored Cavalry Regiment, and I shot 36 pictures. And then I realized that I didn't know how to get the film out of the camera without ruining it.
Oh, jeez.
I hadn't learned that. So I told the colonel that I said, "Sir, I got to fly back into Saigon to get something on the camera fixed." And he said, that's fine, that's fine. I went in, and the USO club, where all the USO shows played before they went to the field, so I knew that club well. I knew that upstairs I had a darkroom. I went up there and talked to the guy who ran the darkroom. He showed me how to get the film out of the camera and how to develop film and how to make context sheets and all that. And I thought, that's pretty cool.
That's pretty cool.
And then I found out through some research that I had to figure out then what pictures do I want to print to release to the civilian media. And I didn't know how to pick them. So I had the darkroom guy help me. We went through all 36 with the magnifying glass. And we decided, if this looks kind of like pictures we've seen in the papers or magazines, that'll do. Well, we picked 21 out of 36 for this. And so I wanted to find out how many pictures do I have to print and how do I release them to the media and all this stuff. Found out that in order to release them, you had to have 20 5x7s of each picture with captions taped to the back. That was going to be 420 prints. So I couldn't print them, and the darkroom was too small for it. So again, I found out that just go to the Tansanut Airport, the Saigon Airport, and the Air Force has a huge air-conditioned van with automated printing facilities in it. I thought, of course, the Air Force does. Jesus.
Of course they do.
Yeah, so I went out there, and I talked to the sergeant and showed him the context sheets and the negatives and all that stuff and what I needed. And he was a neat guy, and he said, yeah, sure. He said, I can do that. He said, who's going to pay for it? And I thought, wait, what? So, is this a game that's starting? I kind of like games. And I said, what do you mean? I said, aren't we kind of on the same side? He said, yeah. But he said, the Air Force isn't going to pay me to print pictures for the Army. He said, the Army is not going to pay the Air Force to print pictures for them. He said, who's going to pay for it? And I said, all right, wait. I said, I can't pay for this. I said, how do I get these pictures? And he kind of smiled, and he said, well, you have to give me what I want. I said, what is a game? I said,
that's a game.
All right. I said, then what do you want? He said, I want sea rations and jungle fatigues. The jungle fatigues were because under Westmoreland's rule, only soldiers assigned to field units could wear jungle fatigues. No Saigon troops could wear them. And you could be court-martialed for having jungle fatigues. So they were in high demand among Saigon people. That made sense. And I said, all right, wait a minute. How am I going to get, I can't steal those. How am I going to get those? He said, you go talk to your supply sergeants and find one where you have good chemistry and then tell them that's what you need and why. I said, why would he steal them? He said, because you're going to give him what he wants. I said, God, does this ever end? And I said, I have no idea what he wants. And then he said, it's one of these scenes you never forget. He said, I know what he wants. And he reached under the counter, pulled out an 8x10 picture, and slid it across the counter to me. And I remember looking at that, and I just yelled, holy shit, Jesus Christ. I don't know if you remember who Anne Margaret was.
Oh, yeah, I remember.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
She came to Vietnam a few months before I did.
Oh, yeah.
This was a picture. She was dancing on stage, and her little twirly skirt was straight out, and the picture was perfect. You could see up over the skirt, and you could see her face with that beautiful face and the unbelievably sexy expression on it that she always managed to get. You know, she was one of Elvis's girlfriends, and singer, dancer, actress, the whole thing. And then the second part was that her underwear was at least 3 sizes too small. So you could count every hair. And I'd never seen a picture like it in my life. And the sergeant said, you take this to your sergeant and to see if he'll steal them for you for this. And I did, and he did. And that's how combat photography was done for 7 months.
I'm pulling up this picture. I want to see this picture.
Oh,
I think
God,
I probably have. Yeah.
I wish I'd had a copy of it. Well, so anyway, we went on our first operation.
Mm-hmm.
And on the third day of that operation, oh, God, we hadn't seen anybody because we're an armored unit. We're driving through the jungle making so much noise, you can hear us coming for half a mile.
Mm-hmm.
And finally, we see a huge bunker off to the side of the road, a brand new bunker, maybe 10 feet long.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the first prop of war that we'd seen. So I called ahead to the column and told them to stop the column, that we're going to get out and check out this bunker. Mm-hmm. So I got out with my camera. I didn't carry a gun, just a camera. Mm-hmm. Two other guys with guns got out with me. We checked out the bunker. Nobody was in it, of course. And the guy said, well, we better check out the area. And I thought, fine. So I stood on the bunker. They walked out from me in a V. There's high grass. A lot of high grass grew in Vietnam. They walked out in a V on two sides of the high grass. After they'd walked about 10 feet, both of them turned and opened fire on something behind the high grass about 15 feet in front of me.
Wow.
And I went up, and there were two North Vietnamese officers lying dead. A captain had a rocket launcher lying by him. The first lieutenant, which is also my rank, had his AK-47 lying across his chest. And I couldn't get my head around this, and I said, what were they doing? And the two guys said the captain was aiming his rocket launcher at our vehicle, mm-hmm. and the lieutenant was aiming his AK-47 at your head.
Oh, wow.
And I couldn't get my head around that either. And I said, but what were they doing? And the men looked at me like I was a moron. And they said, sir, they were pulling the triggers. Their fingers were moving.
Wow.
And I thought about that, and I thought, what's that mean? Half a second? Quarter of a second?
Yeah.
So I looked at the rifle, and just when you think I couldn't say anything stupider, I looked at the rifle and I said, is it on safety? And they both looked at me, and I could hear their minds screaming, did you really graduate from OCS? Jesus. So they pulled the bolt back, and a bullet popped out. I still have that bullet.
You still have that bullet? Wow.
I still have that bullet.
That was pretty smart to grab that thing, huh?
The bullet with my name on it.
Yeah.
And I find that I really don't like to hold it or touch it. It just makes everything come alive again.
Yeah, I would just put that in a jar and keep it on the far end.
I wrap it in bubble wrap and put it in a drawer. Yeah.
So let's wrap up the show as we go out. Give people a final pitch on how to check out your book, Hollow Gods.
Hollow Gods, yeah. You can buy it on Amazon, buy it anywhere they sell books. I think you'll like it. Now, I admit, conservatives are going to like it more than liberals, because I've said that liberalism became a destructive religion, and the socialism that took it over has become a destructive religion. But I think liberals will like it too. I'm a liberal, and I like it.
There you go. So you are a liberal then? You identify as a liberal?
I'm absolutely a liberal in religion.
Okay.
In politics, I vote Republican for the last 10 years.
All right. That's interesting. You see yourself as a liberal, but the liberal has changed so much, I think, especially with woke culture and the left. Sure. I mean, me and Bill Amar, we used to be liberals, but they moved the goalposts. Like they just took it like they just went.
That's right.
And you find yourself in the middle. And you're like, I'm not liberal anymore. I'm kind of middle.
Yeah. Well, the word liberal originally means a bigger helping, and I like that meaning for it. And so I'm still looking for a bigger helping. I just couldn't get it from the Democratic Party anymore.
Yeah. All right. Well, sounds good. Give us your .com so people can find you on the interwebs.
Well, it would be davidsonloehr.com or davidsonloehrauthor.com.
There we go. Well, thank you very much, Davidson, for coming on the show. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Chris. I've enjoyed this.
It's been a great discussion, and definitely something we should all reflect on. And I love your stories of war. You should do I don't mean to tell you what to do, but, I advise a lot of authors when they come on the show. You should do a book about some of your Vietnam stories. That sounds like a That may be a whole new Full Metal Jacket.
Yeah,
Because,
well,
there were
they're in the
photographers
stories
in
of
Full Metal
life.
Jacket, too.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and imagine maybe do you still have your pictures for Vietnam and stuff that you took?
No, well, actually, I do and don't. The combat photography I did on black and white, those are all the Army's negatives.
Oh.
And I wish to hell I had printed an extra copy of each picture that I took for me, but I didn't. So I only have 2 pictures that I took that some author sent me a few years ago.
Oh, really?
Found in papers with my name and the byline.
Oh, that's awesome.
But I also had a movie camera in Vietnam, and I took a lot of Super 8 and 8mm movies. And about 20 years ago, I made a DVD out of those. So I've got about a 50-minute DVD of all the Vietnam things, and then I added narration and music to it. So I have that. I don't.
You could make a nice book, and the video could be a compliment to people who buy the book. And I think your stories of Vietnam would be very interesting, especially, as you observe things more, I think, as a photographer and a cameraman. I'm also a photographer. And I think you observe things more than most people do in the moment. You're kind of a witness to everything, human nature. And so you might consider that if you haven't. There's got to be probably a way to maybe find your photos. I mean, technically, I don't know how it works with the Army, because when you're with the Army, you're kind of owned by the Army.
Yeah.
But my understanding of copyright law is if you're the photographer, you still own the copyright to that material. And so, there's probably, if they gave you the byline on it, there's probably a searchable way, or somebody's got to have a way. Somebody's got to have gone and looked for their photos.
It's a good point. The way combat photography worked, I learned, none of us in the Army minded this a bit, was that you put the pictures in this big double rack for the 5 o'clock briefings every night. And civilian media go through the rack and look at all the pictures, and they take whatever they want. If they're going to print them, they almost always put their own byline on the pictures. Now, we never cared, because we just wanted to get pictures of our guys in the newspapers back home, because it's about morale for us.
Yeah.
And morale helps determine your odds of living and dying. And so if I can get them all printed, I don't care whose byline they put on them, as long as it's our guys. But some of them did still leave our bylines on them.
There might be a request that you could make. I don't know if you can make a formal request to the Pentagon or maybe whatever military body would oversee this. But there's got to be a way to request, maybe, to see if they can find your photos, or they could, even like Googling the internet. It's amazing.
That's
what's
really
on
good.
it. So
I'd never thought of that. That's really good.
I know that there's people who there's some people who've taken some of the digital of just about anything and turn it into electronic. And so there's probably a way that, what was the art? What was the paper back then? The Stars and Stripes, the news.
Oh, the newspaper.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that was their newspaper. The newspaper over there.
Yeah, I think you might have a book there. I mean, the stories, I'm sure, are amazing, heartbreaking, and human nature and human condition. So thank you very much for coming on the show, Davidson. We really appreciate it.
If you send me an email, I'll send you the DVD of all the home movies.
Okay, sure. I'd love to see that. Yeah. Yeah. I think if you had a book, they do these things now with book authors where they do an audio CD that comes with the thing, and it has like pictures on it and different media.
Good. Yeah.
And so it's kind of you can pay more for it, and you can get more than
I have an audio book of Hollow Gods too.
Yeah, people can get on Kindle, hardcover, paperback, and audiobook. Yep. Thank you very much for coming to the show, Davidson. We certainly appreciate you.
Thank you very much, Chris.
Thank you. And order up his book wherever fine books are sold. Hollow Gods, out June 13th, 2023. Thanks for tuning in. Go to goodreads.com/Chris Voss, linkedin.com/Chris Voss, youtube.com/Chris Voss, and facebook.com/Chris Voss. Be good to each other. Stay safe. We'll see you next time.